Would you give a big welcome to those who are worshiping online with us today? We're glad to have you this morning. We're glad to have you here. Hey, and October 24th, write that date down because we are going to have Soak at 5:30 on October 24th. Come on, those of you who've been around Kingwood a little bit, you remember that. For those of you who are new with us, or maybe you've been following us online, so what Soak is a monthly worship and prayer service that we do at 5:30 once a month. It will be October 24th. And it's just a time, there's got to be a time where God's presence and will and what He wants to do is flows freely. He breathes on the body of Christ. And so that's kind of our upper room time to pray and worship and minister together. So we're going to have that on October 24th, 5:30. I hope you'll join us for that. And we don't have a way to offer that online yet, but if you're local here, we'd love for you to be a part of that. I had an incredible friend named Jim Peters, and you would have never met him likely and would have never heard of him. But Jim and his wife and one of their friends from college, they formed this friendship during their college days. They traveled around the country and the world, really, doing evangelism and preaching and teaching and playing music and a lot of this. Jim is absolutely one of the funniest people that I've ever met just by pure personality. I mean, he will leave you in absolute stitches, occasionally crosses the line, you know what I mean? Everybody got that friend? They're like, hey, I think that was a couple steps over. That was a little too much. He didn't know there was a line, so it wasn't a big deal to him. But I met him after Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina struck and we were rebuilding through a series of events, he arrived on our property, introduced himself, and he was such a breath of fresh air to me because he brought a lot of joy into my life at a time that I needed it. I mean, the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and rebuilding and all that was tough. And God brought Jim into my life, and man, he was he's about 6'7", maybe 6'5", big, tall guy, and just super outrageously funny. And he just brought a lot of joy into my life. Well, we kind of likely kept touch through the years. And a few years ago, his wife contracted a terrible, aggressive brain tumor. And in a short amount of time, they went through a lot of treatment and fought it every way they could. But in months, it took her life. And it was just such a painful time for him. And then a couple of years ago, he and I reconnected. He called me. And he said something to me. He found out what our family had been going through. And he said, you know what? When my wife was suffering and she was battling that cancer, he said, somebody gave me some advice that helped me, and I just want to give it to you. And this kind of gives you a little window into who he is. He said, my friend told me when you're going through hell, keep going. When you're walking through hell, keep walking. And he told me, I said, Jim, I hadn't talked to you in a couple of years. It's good to hear your voice. Thanks for calling. A month ago, Jim contracted COVID-19. And although he has been in good health as long as I've known him, it just beat him up. It just beat him up. It shredded his lungs and beat him up. And he went into ICU, and I've been tracking his Facebook page with his wife. He got remarried a few years after his first wife passed, and I've just been keeping up with how they're doing. And he came to a point where there was no turning point. He had kind of stabilized off and was not advancing anymore. And the doctor told his wife, when a person gets into this spot, they usually don't recover. And so, man, they called on friends and family from all over the world to pray, and we'd been praying. And early last week, Jim Peters went to heaven. He lost his battle to COVID-19. It had just beat him to death, and he went to heaven. And, when you look at that, you say, it's really hard to live a life of encouragement when you don't understand the circumstances around you. When you look around you and you say, I can't make any sense of this. You have a man and his wife who'd committed their life to serving God and had brought joy to so many people, and then she tragically was taken, and now he's been, remarried a couple of years, and seems like his life was moving on, and now he's been taken. And you just say, what sense are we as Christians to make of all this kind of tragedy? Well, Jesus' followers, just before he was tried and arrested and beaten and crucified, they were in a place just like that. They were surrounded by circumstances they didn't understand, and Jesus had kind of huddled them together, and the last thing that he told them before he was arrested and went to the cross and all of that was he was trying to prepare them. But you have to understand, just like sometimes tragic news shocks us, they had no way to comprehend of a Messiah who would come and die. Like they had no concept. For generations, for centuries, people had told their kids and grandkids, one day the Messiah is going to come. And their interpretation of that was, the Messiah is going to come and he's going to fix all our problems. He's going to throw Rome out of Jerusalem, who had, set up occupation and all of this, and the heavy taxation. And he's going to fix all our problems. And so they couldn't fathom a Messiah whom they had waited for and anticipated all this time, who would actually arrive in their lifetime and then die. Like they just didn't have a way to understand that, and they were blindsided by it. You ever been blindsided by trouble? You ever have something come into your life and you go, I did not see that coming? A disease like my friend, his wife's brain tumor, or his COVID-19, or you ever have something just battle ram its way into your life out of nowhere, and you go, I don't have a framework to understand this. Loss of a loved one, maybe an unexpected divorce. You say, how did this happen? How did we get here? Health problems, family struggles, and your children or something. You say, how are we going through this? I didn't think it was supposed to be like this. And of course, the pandemic. I mean, if you'd asked anybody 2 years ago, what are you going to be doing in 2 years? Nobody would say, trying to figure out how to live through a pandemic. Nobody would say that. But here we are. See, to Jesus' followers, everything was fun. Like they were exhilarated by following him and by watching his miracles and hearing him teach in a way they had never heard anybody teach their entire life. Everything was going along just the way they thought it should. And Jesus and his followers walked together, watch this, for 3 years now. To give you a point of reference, I want you to rewind the clock in your mind back to October of 2018. That's 3 years. Man, that feels like 100 years ago. These people had walked together, had shared meals together, had journeyed together, had traveled together, had served together for 3 years. They were a very tight-knit community. But here's what Jesus told them. One of the last things he told them before he was arrested and tried and all that, John 16:32, he said this, "A time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will be scattered. Each to your own home, you will leave me alone, yet I'm not alone because my Father's..." What's he saying to them? Hey, the band's breaking up. This has been good. Hadn't this been good? Man, this has been good. Well, it's over. The band's breaking up. Jesus was going to be removed from that community in a sense, and that community was going to completely disband, and the people that they had gathered with, that they had learned to trust with their lives, to trust with their inner motivations of their heart, like it was coming apart. Kind of sounds like now, doesn't it? We are enduring change, fundamental community, societal, global change at a speed the world has never seen. I thought it was fast before the pandemic. It hit a ramp. Like it's just shot up. And we're trying to adjust to what does all that mean. We feel it at work, we feel it at home, we feel it at school, society's shifting. We know things will never be exactly the way they are. We don't know which ones are going to change permanently, which ones aren't. We can only guess about that. We don't really know yet. But boy, in some ways we've all lost some sense of community. I've never seen a period in my lifetime where people have lived more isolated. More isolated. So we can kind of identify with what the disciples are feeling here. They're being scattered and separated. And in the middle of the confusion, before this change happens, Jesus says one more thing. And it's the next verse, John 16:33. He says, in this world, you will have trouble. In other words, look, the whole world's changing. The band's breaking up. I'm going away. You're going to be separated from each other. And by the way, in this world, you're going to have trouble. It's not going to go awesome. It's not all going to be perfect. But take heart, I've overcome the world. Now, we're calling this series this month, Take Heart. And it's going to be a series of encouragement. If you can wrap your heart around what I'm sharing with you today, you'll understand the truth, the foundation of the whole series. But I want to look at this statement. I want to look at this thought of Jesus that He's given to His disciples. There's a negative comment, and then there's an encouraging and a positive one, and I want to look at both of them. It's interesting to me when we look at this truth that Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble. I've been a believer since I was 16, since I was 15. I've never heard anybody in the faith community hold on to that promise. I've never heard anybody claim that truth. Well, I'll tell you the truth that I'm standing on. In this world, you'll have trouble. Thank God. I'm standing on it. I'm believing it. I've never heard anybody stand on that as an affirmation of faith. But listen, it's just as true as everything else God ever said. So we have to not selectively carve out the truths that we like. We have to try to wrestle with all of the truth that God gave us. So what does this mean? In this world, you will have trouble. Why do we struggle with this truth so much? Why do we struggle staying encouraged and overcoming and, staying positive in a world filled with trouble where Jesus has promised us in this truth, not only His disciples, but us too, you're going to have trouble? Well, I could think of 3 reasons, okay? And if you want to jot these down, these are just kind of my thoughts curated over a lot of time and life and trouble. Why do we struggle with this truth about having trouble in the world? Number 1, we struggle when we have unrealistic expectations. Like we expect the world to provide more for us than it can. We expect this life to be sometimes better than it is. And what happens is in a sense, we expect everything to go well and everything to go right and kind of this life to be heaven. But if this life were heaven, what would heaven be? We don't realize it, but we have these expectations that if we work hard enough or earn enough or achieve enough or are good enough or whatever, that we'll achieve absolute security and absolute safety and absolute stability. But the thing is, the world cannot provide that. Every now and then I hear somebody say something that has endured a terrible tragedy, and they say, boy, when I get to heaven, I've got some questions for God. You ever heard? Maybe you've said that. I can't make any sense out of this. When I get to heaven, I got some hard questions for God. As if God's going to be hiding in the back corner of heaven somewhere, wringing His hands, nervously, fidgeting, trying to figure out how to answer your question. I'll tell you right now, He's got a lot of answering to do, when I get to heaven. We'll see. And here's the thing, we don't actually have to wait till we get to heaven to know some of the answers. Some of them we won't know till we get to heaven, but I think that some of the answers that Jesus will give us when we get to heaven, when we come in with, our questions, is He'll say, hey, remember that time I said in this world you'll have trouble? What did you think I meant by that? Like I meant that you're going to endure pain that seems unbearable. You're going to have loss that seems unfair. There are going to be questions that you're never going to find the answer to on earth. There are going to be situations and circumstances that are so hard. That's what I meant. The world's not perfect. It's fallen. It's broken. What did you expect? You were looking in the wrong place. The answers were somewhere else. And then number 2, I think we struggle when we compare the worst parts of our lives to the best parts of somebody else's life. You ever do that? When you're going through, the thing is you can see most of your own life. And when you're going through a hard time, most of it looks bad. And you suffer and you struggle and you're overwhelmed and you're frustrated and you're discouraged and your heart's heavy. And then you pop open social media and you look and there's a family there that looks like they walked out of a toothpaste commercial. You know, they're all shiny and they're at Disney and everything's fine at their house and they never fight, you know, and they're beautiful and, you know, all of that. Everything's going great. But what you see is the part they want you to see. You see the tip of the iceberg. You don't see what's below the waterline. And so it's not fair for you and I to compare our lives to somebody else's because we tend to compare the harder and worse parts to the best part. They might be on the verge of divorce. I mean, they might treat each other terrible. We don't know. Nobody knows. But you're going to be discouraged. You're going to stay discouraged. You're not going to have the heart to take this journey if you keep comparing the worst moments of your life to the best moments of somebody else's. And by the way, because we live in a broken world, some people are going to have better lives than you and I. Can I just, since we're telling the truth, I don't know why. That's just the way it's going to work out. But comparing yourself even to them, even if it were possible to get 100% apples to apples comparison, is still going to just discourage you. It's not going to give you the strength you need to go through this journey. Number 3, we struggle when we base our joy on our circumstances. So we sometimes lack courage because we're trying to get circumstances in our life in a way, hey, and after all this, you know, we'll go on vacation or we'll do this or we'll buy a car or we'll buy a boat or we'll have a dream house or we'll have a dream property, a dream trip or a dream whatever. And when we have that, boy, won't that be good? And then our life will be great. And so if we're not careful, what we do is we drop our anchor into what appears to be a rock, but it's just silt. We drop it into the circumstances of this world, and we try to draw joy from it, and when it disappoints us, we go into a faith crisis. But God, I was believing you for this. And he's thinking, I never said that. So when we try to draw joy from our circumstances, and what happens is, oftentimes, sometimes, we stay discouraged because of a function of the darkness of our own heart. We're trusting the wrong things. And Jesus comes along and he pierces our dark hearts with this truth. In this world, you will have trouble. You will hurt. Life will not always be good. This is never going to be heaven. What did you expect? Did you expect it to be perfect? Did you expect to have a pain-free life? Did you expect to build a wall high enough that no human could ever get over it and get in and hurt you or betray you or frustrate you again? Did you expect absolute financial, emotional, and relational security that you would never have pain again? And if we're honest, what we'd have to say is, well, yeah, kinda. That's sort of what I was looking for. That's sort of what I was hoping for. That's sort of what I've been working toward. That's why I got these degrees. That's why I got this job. That's why, I made these decisions. In my family, my childhood family, I grew up in a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of pain in our family, a lot of dysfunction and brokenness. And as a child, I looked at that, and as I got older and I became a Christian, I began to notice some things. There were some bad decisions that were made along the way in my family. And so I thought, okay, if that's what creates this, then I don't want to do that. I don't want to make bad decisions. And then I saw, sinful behaviors that caused a lot of heartache. And as a young Christian, I reasoned, man, I think if bad decisions and a lot of sin in your life or some sin in your life produces this kind of pain and heartache, I think I can avoid all that if I'll just make better decisions and, try to get as much sin out of my life as I can. And I did that. I tried. I worked on that. And I'm not discouraging you from making good decisions because it does help. And I'm not discouraging you from getting as much sin, allowing Jesus to uproot and do surgery on your heart and get as much sin and darkness out of you as you can. All of that's great. Here's the thing, though. I've still endured great trouble. I've still had a lot of pain in my life. Because we live in a broken world that can still hurt you, and as Christians, we're not immune to it. You can't just make good enough decisions and live good enough that you're going to create a shield that no harm or no pain can ever penetrate. You're not going to find a truth good enough that you can just claim over your life and you'll never have any discomfort or frustration or pain. In this world, Jesus said, hey, can we wrestle with this? In this world, you'll have trouble. Like he wasn't just making it up. Jesus spoke those words to those people who followed him the closest. And if they were going to experience it, you and I are going to experience it. But I'm glad that's not all he said. We wore that part out, didn't we? I'm glad that's not all he said. Look back. John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but, come on, take heart. Watch. Take heart. Yeah. I know you're clapping. I about beat you to death on the first part. I'm sorry about that. You're just glad to have some relief. Take heart, I've overcome the world. Now, two parts here. What does the take heart mean? I've said to you, the New Testament's written in Greek, and to understand what's going on, sometimes you have to go back to the original language and look at that word. This word is not used in the New Testament very much. But it is used another time when Jesus' disciples had gone fishing and they were out on the boat in the lake and a storm came and it was all stirred up and Jesus walked on water out to the boat. And he uses this word again. Watch in Matthew 14:27 he says, but Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. In other words, this isn't a ghost coming at you. Harm is not coming at you. Jesus, the Messiah, God in the flesh, is walking out on the water and is walking in the storm with you. Take heart. Take courage. It's the same word. And now here Jesus is, the last thing he's telling his disciples is, take courage, I've overcome the world. Now let's talk about that for a minute. What good does that do? What good does it do to know that Jesus has overcome the world? Does it pay your bills? Does it send your kids to college? Will it cure all your sicknesses? Will it cure your legal trouble? Will it pay off your debts? Like, how does that help? Well, the entire New Testament hinges on one truth, okay? And this is what I hope will seep into your spirit through this series. It hinges on one truth. That truth is the resurrection of Jesus. Because here's the thing. If Jesus didn't come back from the dead, the entire New Testament's fairy tales. It doesn't matter. It has no power, it has no truth, it has nothing to give us. But if Jesus came back from the dead, then it changes everything. And in John 16, Jesus kept telling, if you read the verses before that, Jesus keeps telling his disciples, hey, in a little while, I'll see you again. In a little while, I'll see you again. And they couldn't understand because all this change was coming and they're going to be scattered and Jesus is going to be arrested and tried and beaten and crucified to death. And they couldn't understand what does that mean? What does that mean? And what he was saying to them is, after I'm crucified, I'll come back from the dead and I'll see you again. So what he's saying, take heart. When you see me again, like in this time period you don't see me, take heart, take courage, because you will see me again. And when you see me again, it'll all make sense. Like you'll understand the whole thing. The curtain will be lifted back, the window will be open, the light will shine in, and you'll see. It'll make sense. No one was more mistreated, more misunderstood, or misjudged than Jesus. Nobody that's ever lived. Circumstances and people literally beat him to death. But when he came back from the dead, he made the greatest statement in the universe that's ever been made. And here's the statement: do anything and everything you want to do to me. In the end, I'm coming back and I will overcome it. So throw what you got. So here's the statement for us today. You ready? The resurrection of Jesus gives us the heart to overcome. Why? It's not because he's a good example. That's not it. It's not like, well, Jesus had more to bear than anybody else and he got through it, and if he can get through it, then I can get through this because I'm not being crucified. That's not it. That's not what this means. It doesn't mean that since He overcame, He's a good example and we can overcome if we just try hard. What it means is that Jesus has already defeated everything that'll come against us in this world and the world to come. That's what it means. He overcame it. And wants to share that victory with us. He wants to share it with us. It means Jesus did it for us. Now, this is a very important point because this is a truth that separates Christianity from every other religion in the world. Because Muhammad never said, I have overcome the world. Buddha never said, I have overcome the world. Confucius never said, I have overcome the world. Jesus made an outrageous and bold claim. He said, I have overcome the world, and then proved it when He came back from the dead and stared in the eye sockets of the disciples who He had said, in this world you're going to have trouble. He stood in front of them and said, touch the sores, touch my side, feel, see, it's me, walk through doors. He proved it. I've overcome the world. That means that Satan and the world threw everything they had at Jesus, and He still overcame it. Now, how does that give us courage now? How does that practically, like tomorrow morning you get up and go to work, and all the problems you had Friday when you're left, they're going to be waiting for you. And I don't know why they metastasize over the weekend. I don't know what that's about, but they do. What does that mean? Here's what it means. If I were to say to you, let's say you were in financial trouble, and I were to say to you, hey, if you can just make it until January 1st of 2022, like less than 3 months, if you can just make it, if I can encourage you with what's coming in your future, on January 1st of 2022, I will give you $1 billion. I bet you'd make it. I bet you'd figure out, right? I bet you'd make it. I'd live in a cardboard box under the bridge till January 1st of 2022. I'd figure it out. $1 billion. Now, what would that do for you? Well, it would help to give you the courage and the heart to deal with whatever happens, because you realize no matter what happens, January 1 of 2022, it can't affect my reward. It can't take away what's coming. What's coming is going to fix everything that could go wrong between now and then. So you would be encouraged to get through it. Little things would bother you less. Late fee, add on 2. I'll take 2. Put the late fee on there. I don't care. Why do I care? So why don't you double it? Just double it. Whatever. You would walk lighter. You would have less stress, because you'd be drawing from a future reality that you know's been promised to you that you don't have yet, but you know it's coming. And it would give you the heart, it would give you the courage to go on. You would say, come on, life, take your best shot, baby, hit me while you can, because this is almost over. And you go, well, yeah, but that's just a little while. Do you know, compared to eternity, like now to the end of your life is just seconds? And if you can draw from the eternal reward that's waiting for you and I in heaven as Christians, that's what Jesus said. Hey, take heart. Man, I don't want you to live discouraged. I don't want you to live defeated. I don't want you to live worn out. I don't want this life just to beat you to death. Man, take heart. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be problems, but take heart, because I've overcome it. And you've got a crown waiting for you that cannot be taken from you. So Jesus said, look, don't expect a trouble-free life, but it won't last forever. It can't change heaven. You have an inheritance that's unshakable and unbreakable and unchangeable. And ultimately, the attacks and circumstances of this world are worthless because they cannot change eternity. Cannot change eternity. And that truth gives us joy. Now, here's the conflict that we have. As believers, we live in the ever-unfolding reality that we have trouble, but also that we have victory. And so the conflict that we fight as we walk through this life is we live in both realities. We have trouble and we have victory. We have trouble and we have victory. How do we reconcile these two truths? Here it is. We're not saved from all trouble, but we are saved in all trouble. So we're still going to go through things, but they're not going to be the end. They're not going to be the final word. Faith in Jesus is not going to make all your problems go away. But I'll tell you what it will do. He's either going to change your problems or He's going to increase your courage and joy and the fruit of the Holy Spirit and give you the energy and the life and the power to go through it. And I mean, if you were going to go through it anyway, whether you were following Him or not, I'd rather go through it following Him because I have resources to draw from. When you anchor your joy in the resurrection, instead of your circumstances, you can be encouraged. So let's say it one more time. The resurrection of Jesus gives us the heart to overcome. So here's the thing. Just like Jesus told His disciples, watch, it's the same move twice in a row in history. One time Jesus came to His disciples and said, look, I know this is going to be hard. I'm going to be taken away and you're going to be scattered and you're going to have to figure out how to live this new life, on your own or, separated from one another. But in the meantime, you're going to see me falsely accused. You're going to hear people say things about me that aren't true. I'm going to be tried. I'm going to be convicted falsely. I'm going to be lied about. I'm going to be slandered. I'm going to be hung on a cross. I'm going to be publicly and shamefully executed. And I'm going to be tortured. And that is going to traumatize you. It's real. It's bad. It's going to traumatize you. But in a little while, you'll see me again. And then you'll understand. And Jesus has again said the same thing to us. In this world, you'll go through things that you won't always understand, and they won't always be fair, and they won't always be right, because this world isn't built on righteousness. You're going to go through trouble. You're going to have hard times, and it's going to hurt. Some of it's going to hurt. All of it won't be removed. But in a little while, you'll see me. And when you see me, it'll all make sense. Your joy will be full. So take heart. You're on a collision course with heaven and eternity. You're on a collision course with perfection in justice and righteousness and holiness and peace and joy. And so why not let some of that backwash into your heart now? Because although this world's never going to be just right, everything's not going to be just perfect, there's coming a world that will be. And there'll never be inequity, and there'll never be a lack of justice, and there'll never be, those crazy things that we experience. And it'll be so much longer than the world we face now. So would you just stand with me this morning? As we go to prayer, I want to ask if you're being baptized today, or one of your family members are being baptized today, would you go ahead and move out the back doors and go to Cafe Mundo? Our team is waiting for you. And if you have children, would you get them first on your way? If they're in kids ministry, would you pick them up? Because some of our children's people serving in children's ministry want to come and be part of water baptism too. And so we'll let them go ahead and go and get ready. They're going to get changed and get ready outside. But for us, would you just close your eyes for a moment? I want to pray. And if you're online with us right now, I want to say to you, man, the presence of God is sweet and rich in this moment. And He's not in this room. He's in this space. And so if you're connecting with us online and you need prayer, man, I want you to jump over to the comment section right now and let our prayer team pray for you. Maybe you've enduring a lot of trouble in your life right now. Man, I just want to ask you to just say, hey, I need prayer. I'm going through a crisis. I'm going through a trouble. Man, our prayer team's been praying for you all day. Lord, thank you so much that you love us enough to tell us the truth, even when it hurts. And thank you that you've overcome everything that hurts. You've ultimately overcome it all. So, Lord, we thank you for your grace today. We thank you for this time that we get to minister to one another and encourage one another. Lord, we lift your name up in this place now. In Jesus' name. Our worship team's coming. Come on, let's worship together as we prepare for baptism, and also we'll have a prayer time.